Hi everyone, I'm Justin the Liberty, the Director of Operations of OCN Distribution, and I am joined today with Deaf Crocodile co-founders Craig Rogers and Dennis Bartok. Thank you guys for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for
Having
having
us.
us on the Zoom call, Justin.
Can you guys talk about how Deaf Crocodile started and where you were both working prior to Deaf Crocodile?
Go for it, Dennis.
Okay, so Craig and I started working together in 2014 at a previous company called Cinelicious. Craig was in charge of the restoration there, and he'd previously worked at IMAX and had his own restoration company. And I came on board to start Cinelicious Picks, which was the distribution division. And we wound up licensing, and Craig was responsible for restoring Belladonna of Sadness, the psychedelic Japanese anime, Funeral Parade of Roses, Leslie Stevens' Private Property, a number of films. And then the parent company, unfortunately, went through some really tough times. And then Craig and I decided to jump ship and start Deaf Crocodile Films, basically because we were interested in putting out a really wide range of things, both new world cinema titles. We've acquired a lot of independent films from Indian and Southeast Asian filmmakers, but we also love all sorts of wild and surreal genre films, world animation. And so we just wanted to be able to explore a lot of these films that had kind of slipped through the cracks of cinema history.
So you kind of touched on this, but the films that you guys have been releasing so far are all these unearthed gems, or they're films like Sampo that are being kind of properly restored and shown to audiences, at least in the United States, kind of for the first time. Can you talk about like the curation and if there's any sort of mission statement from Deaf Crocodile as to what you're trying to go after and bring out?
Well, for the two Petrushko movies that we've put out so far, Ilya Muromets and Sampo, I've been a huge fan of Alexander Petrushko's work for a couple decades now. And around 2001, I'd organized a touring retrospective of his films. And ironically, Ilya Muromets and Sampo were two of the films that weren't available to us to include in the retrospective. So they were always kind of in the back of my mind on my wish list. So I have a little list. Unknown Man of Shandagor was another one. I saw a reference to it in a film encyclopedia decades ago, and I'd never seen it. And I said, someday I have to track this down. And I guess this goes back to my work as a programmer. I was a programmer for many years for the American Cinematheque in LA, and I was, very patient and persistent in trying to find prints of a lot of obscure movies, but sometimes it would take 5 or 6 years to find a print of a film. I remember back in the day before it got restored, spending years trying to find a print of Mario Bava's Twitch of the Death Nerve. For whatever reason, it's like the FBI's most wanted list. That was the top of my most wanted list for years and years. And finally, we found a print with the Cinematheque Royale in Brussels, in Belgium. And we actually brought it in so that we could show it at a midnight screening. But Unknown Man of Shandagor was one of those movies that it was just a title. And we were fortunate enough to get in touch with the sons, Michael and Christian Roy. The filmmaker unfortunately died just before we were able to contact his family, but his sons and his wife were tremendously cooperative, and we were able to work with the Cinematheque Suisse, who had done a 4K scan of the film, and then Craig was able to do additional digital restoration.
And then, yeah, as far as getting films, Dennis, it's a rare time you come across a title he's never heard of. So he's able to reach into his brain and pluck out these obscure titles, and then it's a combination of patience and persistence, and we don't take no for an answer, or no. It's actually more common no answer. We just send out inquiries and hear nothing back, and we'll just keep pecking away. And I honestly think some of the titles we've gotten over the years have been mostly just, they finally are just like, you know what, we just need to say yes, so they'll stop bothering us.
We don't want to get any more emails or Skype calls or whatever from these guys in Los Angeles, and we'll just agree to license this film to them, and then we can go on.
There's an animated film that's been on my radar for a while that they've got to be getting tired of hearing from us. So I'm hoping they'll crack soon.
Oh, it's years now. It's years now, and every couple of months,
Yeah.
you'll pop up and email them again. Hey, it's us.
Yeah.
Asking about ... You know, thank God, Craig is such a wizard and a perfectionist. You know, we're able, because of his incredible talent and skill set, to take on a lot of projects that other boutique labels like us might not be able to do, because they're dependent on whatever master they get from the rights holders overseas. And so for a lot of the films that we're putting out, we arranged for a brand new scan, hopefully from the original camera negative, but that also means we have to invest in a color grade along with the restoration work that Craig is doing. And unless you have an incredibly brilliant in-house digital restoration expert like Craig, it's just the economics are really difficult.
So that's a good segue just kind of into the restoration in itself. You know, like you said, you guys are kind of in this different position where you're handling these restorations in-house on your own. What is the typical, you know, amount of time it takes you on a restoration? Like, what's that workflow like for you?
Craig?
If we're going from a original negative, and say it's a typical hour and a half, maybe 2 hour length movie, it'll be 3-4 months probably at least. And typically it's schedule that dictates how long it'll be, because
our conversations are, okay, so maybe it took 5 years to license this film and sort of persistently pry it out of the archive overseas that had been hiding for all these years. And then our discussion is, okay, well, which one is going to take the longest to restore? And that's part of how we schedule our releases, is like, okay, you know, we got this 4K restoration, it's only going to need maybe minimal work on Craig's part, or, oh no, this is going to be a restoration from like ground zero. I mean, Solomon King is probably one of the most challenging and difficult projects we've done together, right? Because as far as we know, the camera negative is lost years ago. It just seems to have vanished, and all of the all of the trails we followed were dead ends.
Yeah, every vault or archive that it should have been in is not.
Yeah,
I knew people that worked at CFI before they closed, and I reached out to them, and you know, they explained. I was like, well, where did the stuff from CFI go when they closed? And they're like, well, that went to Technicolor. So we reached out to people we knew at Technicolor, and then all the different archives. You know, they've got in their database, they've got notes that they had it.
Well, I think the last note we had was something from like 1978 that it was checked out, and then.
Well, I think that one of them, they had it as late as the early 90s, but it's gone now. Like, so.
Yeah, and they had the 35 millimeter OST, the soundtrack elements, and those were sent about 20 or 25 years ago to Belinda Burton Watts, Sal Watts's widow, who also oversees his estate, who we licensed the rights to Solomon King from, and we've been collaborating, and she's just been incredible this whole process. and she thought she had the camera negative in her closet. And I remember we had a Zoom call last year where she said, "Oh, I can ship this down to you." And we said, "Well, we should probably know what we're getting first." And her daughter Brittany and Belinda were on the call, and they're just carefully unspooling one of the 35 millimeter reels. Of course, it's on cores, and we're like, I don't see any actual image on there. And as a little bit more of it comes off, and Craig's like, "Yeah, I think that's soundtrack element," which was great.
I was pretty sure that's what it was, because it was in cardboard boxes, not cans.
Yeah.
It's typically for sound, but we're like, well, maybe it's the picture. We'll maybe we got lucky, but I mean, we still got lucky. It's the original sound, but
Yeah.
we were at that point. We were like, well, we're halfway there.
Well, that sort of sent us back to square one, and we were really fortunate that UCLA Film and TV Archive had an original print, 35 millimeter release print of the film, which, after exhausting all other options, was pretty much the only picture element that we could find of the complete film. And it has a couple jump cuts, so it looks like it's missing maybe a few frames here and there, but was pretty much complete. But it was badly faded, almost to purple, and had, a lot of kind of regular wear and tear from a print that had been circulated in the 70s. So Craig and Tyler Fagerstrom, who's our colorist, had this enormous job to try and digitally restore color to an image that is basically purple. And we did a 10-second test because we didn't know. So we scanned about 10 seconds of the film, and then Craig and Tyler got to work on it and sent it back, and kind of our jaws hit the floor. And I think that's when we knew that this was going to be possible to actually make the film look good.
And I was surprised at how much color we were able to get back into it. And even from that original test, the first process we were using was bringing back lots of color, but it was also bringing in some heavy noise in areas, and a lot of the greens had a bluish tint to them. And I say we, it's mostly Tyler. He's amazing. Kept plugging away at different ways of trying to bring that color back, and we ended up ultimately with a process that didn't increase the noise, and greens stayed for the most part green. So it looks kind of it's kind of incredible how much color was left in that really faded pink print.
Well, and I mean, not only do we get to release Solomon King and put out a beautiful Blu-ray with a lot of extras, but the film is now preserved and restored. It'll never, hopefully, be lost again. And we arranged to have Belinda deposit the soundtrack elements with UCLA Archive, and we're depositing a ProRes of the restored version of the film with them as well. And then they have the original print. So that means it will be preserved, and people can now watch it in a form as Sal Watts would hopefully have wanted them to see it.